Um, just some topics on his website called Studio Bender. I played videos from him before, basically talking about how different themes in the film industry. So there's a few videos in here that I like. Uh, so we'll kind of just go through these videos and talk about it. So this first one I'll play is the simplest trick for great lighting. Talk a little bit about lighting, and then see how they kind of use lighting tools and techniques in the film industry, and yeah, just talk about it. So let me. So the title of this video is called "This Simplest Trick for Great Lighting," and lighting is one of my favorite aspects of cinematography. Just how lighting can just change a shot, and the way that lighting looks affects the cinematography. Um, and as a photographer and cinematographer and director like myself, lighting is really important to me, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out lighting and how to make lighting um, as cinematic and beautiful as possible, because lighting does change a shot. So before I even play this video, uh, hey, what's going on, Elijah?
Hey, Asante, everything's going good. As soon as I knew you were going to say the question, I knew I had to reply.
Yep, you beat me to it. Um, okay, cool. Um, any movies, shows, videos catch your eye recently? Anything you've seen? Anything?
uh, Not really.
Okay, got you. All right. Well, last week we talked about, you know, box office budgets, um, Mission Impossible, stunt acting, and that whole process. Today, I kind of want to talk about some other things within the film industry. Share my screen. So we've been on this site before called Studio Bender. This is how where I show all my videos. We'll show all the videos for the course. I think they do a really good job of talking about different concepts and just different things that you would want to know in the film industry. So I think today I'm gonna go off some of these videos and we can talk about it. And yeah, and just kind of take it easy today. Um, so the first video I wanted to show is this one right here. It said the simplest trick for great lighting, and I kind of want to talk a little bit today about lighting, because lighting is a concept I like, a topic I like to talk about a lot. I don't know if you know, I'm a photographer and you know videographer slash cinematographer, so lighting is something I uh, just enjoy, working with, and I'm just have a passion for it, and just learning about different ways to use lighting and different techniques. Um, and different stuff like that. And lighting is one of the most important aspects of cinematography, of the visuals, right? Because the way that you present light gives the video a different look. And it's this kind of debate in the film industry, like what's the most important, no, not like what's the most important aspect of cinematography. In my opinion, I think it's lighting. Some people say it's the camera that you use. Some people say it's the lens. Some people say, it's different things. But in my opinion, I think it's the lighting. And I say that because, I mean, think about it. You can't shoot anything without light. So if you don't have a light, you're just filming a pitch black thing, like a pitch black video. So you can have the best camera of all time. You can buy a $40,000 camera, but if you don't have any light, you can't record anything. So literally, light is the most important aspect because without it, you can't see anything. So that's what I think lighting is most important. Um, with that being said, obviously, once you get lighting, then yes, the camera matters and the lens and all that stuff, but you cannot capture a shot without lighting. That's why lighting is important and why understanding lighting is important. And one of the first things that they kind of teach you in photography with like aperture and ISO and shutter speed, all that has to do with lighting. Same with cinematography. So if you understand light, you get really good shots, really cool shots. Um, So I kind of want to talk a little bit about that today in terms of, different ways in the film industry they use lighting. So, but I'm just show you some examples of different lighting situations so you can see what I actually mean. So check this out. Um, okay, so we see this graph right here. This is different lighting setups. So all these lighting are different, and you can see each one gives like a different look in a way. Now, some of them may look a little similar, but they all have a little bit of difference in terms of what they look like. So some are overhead. So like this one, well, this one's actually under. Oh, they might use two light styles here, but let me see. So for this one, this is definitely overhead, right? So the lighting's at the top, aiming down, so we get this more dramatic look. Um, this type of lighting is the same. It's just I'm sure they have like a diffuser on it, diffusion paper, diffuser. I don't know why I can't say it, but basically what that does is that makes the light softer, so it looks more of like a glow. Right, this looks a little bit harsher than this one. This one looks more spread out, more flush compared to this one's more harsh. This one is underhead lighting, right? The lighting is at the bottom, aimed up. Uh, this one, I actually don't know. I think this is also overhead. This one is you have lighting on the left and the right, and you can tell what direction the light coming from by looking at the subject's face and where the light is hitting their face. So if light's hitting here, light's hitting here, you know that one light's coming this way and one light's coming this way. Same here, they just use diffusion, and then here you have one light pointing at him this way, and then I feel like this is diffusion to make it softer. So I don't know. I feel like all these give a different look. Like this one looks like somebody's like like getting operated on in a doctor's office or abducted by aliens. This one looks more dramatic. Uh, Same with this one. These all kind of look different, and the way that you capture light. That so. Um, let's see. Let's see what else we got.
I reference how the lighting of the characters would look like in references.
Say that again.
So if I compare those, so this would probably change like the effects of the character.
Yeah, it makes the shot look different. And I'm gonna show you. We're gonna watch a video too and talk about it, but I want to show you some other examples to show you the difference. Okay, so here's a good example, a good chart. Okay. Which shot looks more dramatic? This one or this one? And which one looks more cinematic, more dramatic? This one, butterfly or flatlight, in your opinion?
The butterfly.
Yeah, I agree. And why do you think that?
I mean, it said. I mean, the butterfly has one strobe, the light stand, each one each of
You said the butterfly has one light on the light stand.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to see.
Yeah, yeah. You can see right here is one light aimed directly at her face, and then this one is two lights. So this light I would say is cleaner and brighter, right? But this one is more cinematic and more dramatic. So neither of these are wrong. It's just a matter of what you're trying to capture. So if you're trying to capture drama, a drama scene, something like I said, dramatic, you probably want to go for this shot. But if you want to capture something more bright, show that it more like illuminated look, this would be the light you would want to use. So there's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of what you're trying to accomplish or achieve in your shot. So that's why I love lighting so much, because you get so many different looks depending on where you aim the light. And then you have like shots like this where you can add strobe gels. So you put like these basically translucent pieces of paper with different colors in front of the light. So when you take it, it reflects that color off. So here they put a red, and this is cool. They actually put a red light on the light aimed at her. Then they put a blue light aimed at the background to give off that blue. And then they put a purple light in the back. And then that's how you get this purple back here. So they use they use like 5 different lighting sources, but 3 different colors. So that's why this shot looks so colorful, because they use colored gels. So you got that red on the side, same here, that blue in the back right here, and then that purple coming from the left side right here. So I deal with lighting a lot, and it's still a lot I have to learn about it. And I've been doing it for like 3 years, and I'm still learning about it because there's so much more to learn and do with lighting. You can get really, really dope, really creative with it. So yeah, you can get different lighting styles, get different looks. I like this lighting a lot. Yeah, I love lighting. Love lighting. Um, okay, but yeah, that's just a little bit about lighting. So I'm gonna play this video and we can talk a little bit more about it.
A great shot begins
Turn it down. So.
with great lighting.
Keep.
And while great lighting requires
1 second.
careful attention. It doesn't necessarily require expensive, high wattage setups.
Can you hear that, Elijah?
Oh, yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so I'm playing from the top.
A great shot begins with great lighting. And while great lighting requires careful attention, It doesn't necessarily require expensive, high-wattage setups. With a bounce board, you can shape lighting at virtually no cost. But it's not always as simple as holding up a white sheet. This is the art of the bounce board.
Actually, before we get into this, I think this is a better video to start off with, and then we'll.
Hey guys, Justice here.
Hold on, let me just see.
Neon signs, or the moon. Practical lighting refers.
Okay. Yeah, I'll play this first.
Films are made up of sequences. Sequences are made up of scenes. And scenes are made up of shots.
That's a joke.
In previous episodes, we covered camera movement, editing techniques, and composition. Today, we'll focus on lighting fundamentals, from different types and qualities of light to essential lighting terms and gear.
And then there was light.
This is episode 12 of The Shot List. Cinematic Lighting, Part 1. Hit subscribe and enable notifications to get all future episodes of The Shot List. At the end of the video, we'll explain how you can download your own cheat sheet for everything we're about to cover.
Let there be light. Ah, my eyes!
Lighting is one of the most important elements of filmmaking. More than just illumination, lighting itself plays a massive role in visual storytelling. Lighting can help determine the mood of your scene, provide insight into a character, and guide a viewer's eye. On set, these decisions are made primarily by the director of photography and the gaffer, who is the head lighting electrician on the crew. Once a lighting plan has been decided by the DP, the gaffer executes it.
Okay, just some little notes here. There's two people in charge of like the visual storytelling on a movie set. You got the DP, which is the director of photography, also known as a cinematographer, also known as the camera operator. So this is the person who records the movie with the camera. So they call him the DP, or like I said, director of photography, cinematographer, camera operator. All of that's the same thing. So they're in charge of the actual camera and recording and the shots. Then you have somebody called the gaffer, and they're in charge of the lighting, right? So they have complete control of the way that the scene is lit. So they control the lighting from outside, inside, all different types. So they have to work together to achieve a good shot, because you need somebody to record with the camera, and then you need somebody to work with the lighting. So that's the DP, that's the gaffer. So if you ever hear that, that's what that is. The gaffer is in charge of the lighting, the DP is in charge of the camera.
Once a lighting plan has been decided by the DP, the gaffer executes it by obtaining the necessary lights and gear and overseeing the setups. In part 1 of this video, we'll cover the lighting fundamentals. In part 2, we'll dive into how to light subjects and their surroundings. Before you begin setting up lights, it's important to understand the different forms light comes in.
Explain it all to me now.
All light can be split into two categories, natural and artificial. Natural light is any light that occurs naturally, like sunlight, moonlight, and firelight. Artificial light is everything else. Man-made light powered by electricity. From there, we can branch out into additional categories. Ambient lighting refers to any lights that are on location which the crew didn't bring. This includes street lamps, neon signs, or the moon. Practical lighting refers to any light source that can be seen in the frame, whether it be ambient or placed there by a gaffer. Motivated lighting means that there is a logical or reasonable justification for the light in a scene. Often, practical lights exist simply to justify or motivate the light. To be able to work with light, cinematographers also need to understand its properties. For example, how does one measure light? Lumens is a measurement of how much light a source produces. Lux, or foot candles, measures how much of that light hits the subject, otherwise known as incidental light. Reflective light is the amount of light that reaches the camera. The amount of light is dependent on both the strength of the source and its position in relation to the subject. As soon as light leaves the source, it begins to lose intensity. This is called light fall-off, and we can predict and account for this loss using an equation called the inverse square law. The intensity of light is equal to 1 over the distance squared. Basically, this means that every time you double the distance away from the source, the light is reduced by 75%. Another aspect of light that cinematographers measure is the color temperature, which is measured in thermodynamic units called kelvins. Daylight is bluer than most artificial lights at about 5600 Kelvin. Daylight can also be imitated by artificial light sources with the same temperature. Tungsten lights are a common artificial source with a color temperature of about 3200 Kelvin, though this can vary based on the source. Mixing these two.
So another note about this, if you ever see a movie and it has this like blue tint to it, where it's like melancholy, that like blue cool look, that's daylight. That's that blue look. And they measure that. You don't really need to know this yet unless you want to get really into lighting. It's negative 5,600 Kelvin or close to 6,000 Kelvin. That's how you get that blue look, that daylight look. So if you ever see this kind of look in a movie, that's daylight. But then you have a more orange look, a more warm look. This is tungsten. So this is, between like negative 300, negative 3,000 and like 1,000 Kelvin. So daylight is more blue and cool. Tungsten light is more warm and orange.
Tungsten lights are a common artificial source.
And then you can mix the two together. You can mix blue and orange and get a really interesting look. And they'll show that in a second.
With a color temperature of about 3200 Kelvin, though this can vary based on the source. Mixing these two light sources, therefore, can add a variety of color to your shot, with tungsten lights adding orange and daylight adding blue. For a thorough explanation on color temperature, check out our video linked below. Once you understand your light sources, you'll need to know some basic concepts and terminology. To the uninitiated, hearing cinematographers talk about lighting can sound like a foreign language. Let's look at some of the most commonly used terms on set. Exposure is the amount of light that reaches the sensor or film stock. In previous videos, we explained the mechanisms that determine the exposure: the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. The aperture is an adjustable mechanism that determines how much light enters the lens, and the various sizes are measured in f-stops. Each f-stop either doubles the amount of light or reduces it by half. T-stops are another common setting in cinema lenses to measure exactly how much light actually hits the sensor. All cinematography is a balance between light and shadow, and one of the ways this relationship is expressed is called the contrast ratio. This is a shorthand for how we measure the difference between light and shadow in two areas of an image, usually between the two sides of a subject's face, or between the subject and the background. High-key lighting is a term that expresses a low contrast ratio, where the background and the subject are lit evenly with minimal contrast. Low-key light.
So if you ever hear or see these shots like this one, like Harry Potter, were super bright, this is high key lighting, meaning low contrast. So basically what that means is that the front of the subjects and the foreground is well lit up just as well as the background. So we can see the background is just as bright as the foreground with the characters. Same in this shot. Everything's lit pretty much evenly. Yes, they're different colors, but it's still lit pretty evenly. We can see the background just as well as we can see the foreground. And that's high key lighting, whereas low contrast, not much difference in terms of shadow and intensity and depth. It's all kind of the same, but that's high key lighting. And then low key lighting is the opposite. That's when it's high contrast. That's when you can see a difference between the foreground and the background. You get darker shots and more in-depth lighting has more depth.
On the other hand, uses a high contrast ratio where the difference between light and shadow is much larger with maximum contrast. Both high and low-key lighting are used in a variety of genres to evoke specific moods and atmospheres. Overall, high-key lighting is used for brighter, happier scenes, while low-key lighting is often used for darker, dramatic scenes.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
Chiaroscuro is a type of low-key lighting with a high contrast ratio. This is seen most frequently in film noirs to enhance the subgenre's mysterious and dangerous qualities. Check out our video on chiaroscuro to learn more. A cinematographer must also choose between hard light and soft light. Hard light is more directional light that creates stark shadows, which works best in more dramatic or intense scenes. Soft light is more diffused and generates less defined shadows. This type of lighting is often used for happier or romantic scenes. Some of the best naturally occurring soft light comes during magic hour or golden hour. This occurs twice a day, just before sunset and just after sunrise, when the sunlight is less harsh and more colorful.
So if you take so like they mentioned, you have two routes you could take. You could do a natural light or artificial light. So natural light is light that occurs naturally. So from like the sun or the moon or, the sky or fire or, anything that's natural. Then artificial light is anything that's not natural. So a neon sign or a car light or a lamp, right? Those are artificial lighting, man-made lighting. So depending on which, let's say you want to go the natural light route for majority of the movie, you have like golden hour, and how they mention how, you get this nice look right after sunrise and right before sunset. And you rely on the sun and the sky and the moon and the clouds to give you this nice look that reflects off of the sky. So I love that golden hour look, but you have to shoot at the right time of day and know, when the sun is about to rise and when it's about to set, so you can plan this out accordingly, because you only get that amount of light depending on like what time of year it is and where you are. You really don't get that much time to shoot in these type of lightings, because soon as sunset hits, you only get like an hour, if that. Same with sunrise. So with these lights, you got to really plan this out and shoot right at that moment, to get it most as you can, because lighting changes very quickly. So just keep that in mind.
This occurs twice a day, just before sunset and just after sunrise, when the sunlight is less harsh and more colorful. Lighting placement in relation to the camera should also be considered. The dumb side, also called the broadside, is lighting the side of a subject which is closer to the camera, often giving the subject a more approachable feeling. The smart side, also called the short side, refers to lighting the side of a subject that is not facing the camera, giving the subject a more dramatic look. Lens flares are created when light hits the lens, the shapes and colors of which differ depending on the lens.
For
For me, it literally is just this aesthetic thing that I like, which I absolutely am guilty of overusing and realize that it can be insanely distracting. Which I absolutely.
And he's talking about this like light streak right here. This like blue light streak. I love when I see that in movies because I love shots like that, especially like this blue one. And that's like a lens flare effect. That's what happens when you aim the camera at directly at the lighting source. And depending, like they said, depending on the lens and the lighting, you get weird light streaks and light fractals, and it just makes the shot look so much cooler. I can't describe why, but I don't know. It just looks cool. But J.J. Abrams just mentioned how it could be distracting, which I guess it can be. But if you show it really quickly or for a couple seconds, I think it just looks so cool in a movie. I love seeing that in movies, like that lens flare.
Giving the subject a more dramatic look. Lens flares are created when light hits the lens, the shapes and colors of which differ depending on the lens.
For me, it literally is just this aesthetic thing that I like, which I absolutely am guilty of overusing and realize that it can be insanely distracting. But I do love the look of it, and it's just this incredible look that for some moments feel appropriate.
Bokeh are out-of-focus elements in a shot, typically points of light that often add a romantic or painterly texture to the image. Now that we've got these key terms and concepts under our belts, let's look at the gear necessary to achieve them.
Yes, real fine, expensive gear you brought out here, Mr. Hooper.
A professional film set often has an expansive variety of lighting equipment, but there's some gear which are almost certain to see on any set. Lights themselves come in a variety of forms. There are tungsten lights, which are powerful and have a warm color temperature. Daylight is usually achieved with HMI lights, which are even stronger but have a cooler temperature. Fluorescent lights, which offer soft, cool light. Kinoflows, which are banks of tube lights adjustable to various temperatures. And LED lights, which provide a high amount of control over color and strength. For more control of a light's color, gaffers will often use gels, thin plastic sheets which come in an assortment of colors. Used in concert with a light's color temperature, gels help cinematographers achieve their desired hues.
And this one I was mentioning before, those gels that they put on the light to make the light a different color. So it's like this translucent plastic sheet with different colors that you put in front of the light, and it changes the color to whatever the color the sheet is. So yeah, that if you ever hear gels, that's what that is.
With a light's color, gaffers will often use gels, thin plastic sheets which come in an assortment of colors. Used in concert with a light's color temperature, gels help cinematographers achieve their desired hues. A light meter is used to measure the amount of incidental lighting hitting a subject, which then informs the exposure settings on the camera. Some models also include a spot meter, which allows you to pinpoint an exact part of the image for exposure. Many cameras themselves also have different modes to measure the reflective light actually reaching the lens. Other ways to measure lighting ratios include waveforms, histograms, and false color, which we'll cover in a future video. Once you've made the choice to use soft light in a scene, there are many ways to create the necessary diffusion. Diffusion is when a semi-translucent material is placed between the light source and the subject.
So like I was saying, like diffusion paper or diffuser or diffusion, that's basically any type of tool that spreads light out so it's not so harsh. So these like white boxes right here, that's diffusion paper. And that's used to make light look softer and make it more spread out. Because if they took this away, it would just be a light just shining on you. That would be too bright and it will blind you and be kind of hot. So you put this diffusion paper on it to kind of spread out the lighting and make it not as harsh and direct. It makes it, spread out and look smoother and better. Well, I wouldn't say better, but it just gives it a different look and makes it look more full and less shadows.
This scatters the light, making it softer, and there are a few methods used to do this. Soft boxes use translucent cloths placed in front of a light. Diffusion paper can achieve a similar effect. Silks are often used for larger sources. Of course, there are also natural diffusers like clouds, fog, dust, or smoke. Bouncing the light with reflectors creates diffusion while also redirecting light. Reflectors come in a variety of colors and textures, each bringing a unique type of diffusion. Beadboards are styrofoam boards with imperfect surfaces that scatter light differently than a piece of foam core which bounces light more evenly. Another way to mitigate the intensity of the light is with neutral density gels. These can be attached to the light or applied to windows to reduce the sunlight. Flags are opaque boards that shape and block unwanted light. Barn doors are adjustable flaps on the light itself, which have a similar function. Egg crates direct light and help prevent it from spilling into unwanted areas. Cookies add texture to a light. Short for the term cuculoris, cookies are boards with patterns cut into them that create a dappled effect when placed in front of a light. Mounting and positioning lights on set can be done with light stands or with C-stands, which are also useful for setting up diffusion, flags, and reflectors. Just about anything needed to complete the desired setup. Believe it or not, we've just scratched the surface on cinematic lighting.
This is only the beginning.
There are more terms, gear, and concepts out there, with more arriving every day. In the next episode, we'll take everything we learned here and apply it to real-life lighting scenarios, including how to light a subject versus how to light the background, with actual lighting setups from the best cinematographers working today. In the description, you'll find a link to the Studio Binder blog.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about lighting. So there's a cinematographer. His name is Roger Deakins. He has a very good eye, and he made the movie 19. He didn't make it. He shot, and he was the cinematographer for the movie 1917, Blade Runner, Sicario,
He
No
also
Country
did
for
it for How
Old.
to Train Your Dragon.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Let me see.
I think
He did. Wait. Oh, okay. He was a visual consultant.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like, it's an animated movie. How can he be the cinematographer? But that makes sense. He's the visual consultant. So he was in charge of the way the shots were constructed and lighting. So that makes sense. He also did a bunch of other movies. He was he did it for Rango, cinematographer and visual consultant for the animated film Rango, and also served as visual consultant in other features like Wall-E, Puss in Boots, Rise of the Guardians, The Croods, How to Train Your
Of course, I know
Dragon.
Rango actually won the award, the 2012 Elf Academy Awards, the other Pixar movies to win. I mean, for Cars 2, I wish that movie did better, but unfortunately, that didn't work.
Yeah. But if you look at his movies or his film, his awards, how many awards does he have? He's been nominated for 16 Academy Awards, winning the Cinematography Award twice. for Blade Runner in 1917.
That's a lot.
16 nominations is crazy. And for Blade Runner, I don't know if you've seen that movie.
16 nominations?
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen Blade Runner 2049. The
By the way,
visuals for that movie.
I had to get this a watch for the first time.
You said what?
I had to get this a watch for the first time. Apparently, I never actually heard of it until now.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you something. Like, look at these shots. Crazy, 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 crazy. Amazing shots. Amazing shots. Amazing. Like, and the reason I say it's amazing is because 3 reasons. First, the composition, meaning like the angles. So like this, he has like, what's his name? What's the actor's name? Ryan Gosling. He has him centered right here. Like amazing framing / composition. Then the colors are amazing, and then the lighting is amazing. So he mastered the 3 most important parts of cinematography: composition / like angles and framing, lighting, and then color. Well, he didn't really do the color, like the color grader did it, but I'm sure he has some say. But this movie is like visually amazing. So if you're into visuals and like visual storytelling, you have to see this movie. You have to see this movie. Um, so I absolutely understand why he won best cinematography for this movie, because this was great. But what other movies did he do that cinematography for? Sicario, one of my favorites. Prisoners, another favorite. Skyfall, True Grit, No Country for Old Men, my absolute favorite. Fargo, Shawshank. Yeah, no, he's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. So yeah, I love cinematography. How old is he? He's 75. And he's still making movies. And so, oh, good. Okay. But yeah, so that's one of my favorites for cinematography, Blade Runner. I also like the scene in, did you see the second Gladiator? Gladiator 2? Oh, no, not Gladiator. Dune 2.
I ain't gonna lie. I had to get that movie a rewatch. I had to get this movie a watch for the first time. It's in my watch list, so I might as well check it out.
Yeah, but it's a certain scene, though.
Wait, a certain scene? What do you mean? Wait.
Like, here, hold on, let me find it. Oh, they're right here. Now this scene, just look at the lighting, and I'll talk about it after. But I Yeah, I'm gonna just play this one scene from it, and just pay attention to the lighting of this scene, the color, the lighting, the contrast, everything about it. Just check it out.
Das agrem gedisi, ut kiprimak dragut.
That safe isn't drugged.
That bug is walking straight. You should cancel the fight.
Don't spoil my nephew's birthday. Happy birthday, dear nephew.
Why do they not stop the fight?
Plans within plans.
Show me who you are. There he is.
All right, I will like spoil it for you in case you want to see the whole thing, but I just want to show you just how crazy this lighting is. Like, it's black and white, but it's like inverse. So like this shot here, let me see. Like this opening shot, amazing. That shot, great lighting, subjects in the shadow. We can't really see him, but we see it opening up, him ready to get out there. This is a great shot, you know, that overhead lighting and frontal lighting, opening, amazing. And then we get this like stadium lighting. We like see him as like this small subject. And then just they look like it looks glow in the dark, but like it looks translucent, like their skin. Like I don't even know how they did this. It's like glowing. And then it's black and white, but it's also clear at the same time and really crisp. And then his teeth, they made his teeth black and his skin white, so that contrast. It made him bald, no hair, so it looks like an alien. And then that like, it's just so dope. That black and white contrast with each other makes it like the black people in the suits like evil against the guy who's white. So it like makes that contrast really stand out. What else? And then the blood, oh, see his teeth is black. That's dope. 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 I love this is one of my favorite visual scenes ever in a movie that I've ever seen. I just love the like high key, low key lighting, the contrast, black and white. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a little bit about lighting there. And it's one more video I want to show with lighting. All right.
Hey guys, Justice here with tomorrowsfilmmakers.com, the largest online film academy in the world. And today we're talking about cinematic lighting. Now, this video is part 2 in our cinematic trilogy: cinematic composition, cinematic lighting, and cinematic movement. Now, lighting is not only the most overlooked aspect of filmmaking, but is also the #1 thing that will change everything about your projects. If you can learn lighting, you will up the production value like you have never seen before. And like I said, it's also the most overlooked aspect of filmmaking. I've actually seen filmmakers buy red cameras with no lighting, and their footage looks worse than someone with a T5i with great lighting. When people ask me to critique their work or ask me why their shot doesn't look as good as their competition, I can usually tell immediately that they either didn't have any lights or their lighting is really bad. Because of that reason, inside our full course, we have an entire 40-episode in-depth lighting course taught by Josh Osley. Josh not only teaches all about lighting, but we follow along with him as he lights all types of different scenarios, with expensive lighting to cheap lighting. And we've been selling our film course successfully for years with an $800 price tag, and have had over 4,000 students. But right now, we're doing something we have never done before. We're running an insane sale of only $90. If you want to take advantage of this crazy deal, you can check out our website in the link below and head on over to tomorrowsfilmmakers.com to learn more. But in today's lesson, I want to give you the 8 steps that you need to take in order to have cinematic lighting. If you take these 8 steps, I promise you, your image will look 1,000 times better, even if you just have a cell phone. And to show you just how easy it is to get great lighting, I personally own many aperture lights and I use them for every single project. And in my opinion, aperture lights are some of the absolute best that you can buy. But for this entire episode, everything that you are seeing has been shot with cheap lights that anyone can buy. I'm using the Godox SL150, which is about $240, and the Godox SL60 watt, which is only about $150. So I want to take a cheaper light and show you guys that you don't need crazy expensive lights to get cinematic lighting. All you have to do is follow these 8 steps and you will be shocked at the difference. Starting off with step number 1, and is actually one of the most important and also doesn't require any lights, and that is to shoot shadow side. Now, there are many different names for this: shooting negative fill side, short side, dark side, whatever you want to call it. But the idea of shooting shadow side is that whatever side your light is placed on, your camera needs to be on the other side of the subject. This might seem like something really simple, but you wouldn't believe the difference it makes. And you also wouldn't believe how many people don't do this. And I challenge you, go choose any movie off your shelf and try to find a shot that isn't on the shadow side of the subject. It's really difficult because almost every shot in a movie is on the shadow side. Now, the reason they do this is because it gives a much more dramatic feel to the scene. It adds depth to the person's face and also adds more of a 3-dimensional element. It doesn't have to be like a really strong contrast where you can barely see the person's face. It could even be really subtle, like this frame. Even though there's a lot of light on our subject, the key light is coming from the other side of the person's face. If we take these 2 images, we can clearly see which one looks more cinematic. It's always going to be the one where there is more shadows on the subject's face. When I first started out, most of my filming was done on the key side, and it didn't look cinematic whatsoever. All of my interviews were done on the key side, and everything that I filmed was done on the same side that the light was on. One major secret that I learned over the years of filming is that if you want that cinematic look in your images and boost the production value of your films, simply move the camera to the other side of the light. With an interview, put the light on the other side. If it's a really simple shot and someone's literally writing on a calendar, step to the other side of the person's face. If you don't have any lights, just put the light source on the other side of the person's face, even if it's just the sun. You aren't going for like a silhouette look, just a cinematic look. Such a simple step can make such a difference in your production value. Step number 2 is lighting direction. The entire emotion of your project can change just by slightly moving the light in your scene. If you move the light too far up above your subject, you get more dark shadows underneath the eyes, and the person looks less trustworthy and more depressed. If you put the light too low, you'll reverse the shadows on the face, and the person will start to look like a villain. To get the most natural looking light on a person's face, you want to have the light at a 45-degree angle on their face, creating an upside down triangle on the subject's opposite cheek. This is known as Rembrandt lighting, named after the famous painter Rembrandt, who used this in almost all of his portraits. This lighting will keep those shadows on the face, but also give enough lighting on the other side to illuminate the eye and slight cheek definition. You'll also create a slight drop shadow under the chin, and it just looks natural. If you're setting up your lights, remember that the direction of the light is just as important as anything else. If you place the light at the wrong angle or position, too high, too low, it can result in an amateur image or even confuse your audience as to what they should be feeling. Just a slight movement can make such a difference. Step number 3 is depth. Creating depth and separating your subject from the background is a necessity when filming. You do not want your subject to blend into whatever background they're in. You can create separation by shooting at a lower aperture, bringing your subject away from the background, but you can also add separation by lighting. And one way is with color. Now, like it or not, the orange and teal blockbuster look is very popular because of the color contrast. If the skin tones are very warm and orange, what is the opposite of orange on the color wheel? Blue. Blue complements orange. You see this all the time in movies, and not just in the Transformer movies. But by putting complementing colors in your films to separate your subject, you're not only going to make your film look more cinematic, but you're going to add separation from your subject and the background by having two different complementing colors in the same shot. And again, it doesn't have to be blue and teal. It could be any complementing colors. So if you have a very warm light on your subject's face, instead of putting another warm light in the background, put a complementing color like blue. Find complementing colors to add depth to your image. Another way to separate your subject is to simply have your background darker than your subject. If the background is brighter, it's going to be much harder for the subject to stand out. Simply bring down the exposure of the background to where the subject is brighter than what is behind him. It doesn't have to be super dark. The background.
And this makes sense, right? We see somebody, we rather it be dark in the back and they're bright, so we get that separation of color or separation of contrast and lighting. This shot is too bright in the back and kind of bright in the front, so it's no real contrast. But here there is. It's bright in the front, dark in the back, so that really makes the subject stand out. And so that's really important.
To where the subject is brighter than what is behind him. It doesn't have to be super dark or super bright, but the formula that I use is brighter shirt, darker background, darker shirt, brighter background. You just want your subject to stand out from the background by most of the time being brighter than the background, but sometimes even being darker than the background by creating depth. Number 4 is motivated lighting. Nothing screams amateur more than unmotivated light. Now, this is light that doesn't come from anywhere and just kind of appears in the scene. Motivated lighting means that in the scene, the lighting is coming from something in the room and the audience knows it. If we show a wide shot and there's no windows or anything around, and then when I cut to a close-up, there's a bunch of light on our subject, it just doesn't make any sense. Motivated lighting means that the audience knows that the source of the light is coming from something natural. If we have a random light on our subject, it just looks unnatural. But if we simply turn on a lamp next to them, it looks like that key light is coming from the lamp, even though in reality, the lamp isn't really putting off much light and wouldn't be able to light up our subject's face like this. But by placing some sort of light source visible to the audience to see, we have created natural, motivated light. In this scene, in Bigger Than Life, this harsh underlighting really does make the tension grow in the scene, but why on earth is there a light in the living room pointed up at them? So make sure you have motivated lighting in your scene. It doesn't have to be difficult, and it also doesn't need to put off any light onto your actual subject. It can be as simple as putting a really small lamp in the background. All you want to do is make sure the scene looks natural and that the audience knows where the lighting is coming from. In this scene from Silence, when these characters are having a deep conversation, there's a lot of side lighting on their faces. The only problem is that there is only one giant window in the entire room producing any light, and it's behind them. So how do we show motivated lighting? We have one wide shot showing light coming into the room and hitting the side of the wall over here. Once they show that, the side lighting doesn't seem out of place. Imagine if they didn't show that wide angle shot and it was just a giant window producing light into the room. Then we cut to a close-up and it's side lighting. It would make no sense. So whenever you're lighting a scene, if there isn't a natural reason for a light to be on the face, create one. Next is background lighting. This is something that many people tend to look over because how important it is to light your subject. But if you forget to light your background, your image will not look natural and you run the risk of it looking like a stage play by having all the light on your subject and a completely dark background. And I'm not just talking about interviews. It's important to have some sort of background light for interviews, but in narrative filmmaking as well. Most times this can be achieved simply with just some practical lights. You can add a small lamp to the background if it isn't enough light, maybe add a little bit more light to brighten up a certain area if needed. You can also add some ambient light in the background by either pointing a light into the ceiling, pointing a light into a wall, into a room with lots of diffusion. Just add some sort of life to the background so that it looks natural and doesn't look like the subject was just lit by a stage and they completely forgot about the background. Take any movie or TV show and just imagine how a certain shot would look if there was no light in the background. This shot would be completely black behind our subject if it wasn't for that small light. Same thing with this shot. If it wasn't for those few candles, this shot would look unrealistic and look like it was filmed on a stage somewhere. Adding a few small lights to the background really make a difference. Next is time of day. And for those of you who don't know, the absolute best time of day to shoot is in golden hour. This would be the first hour of light when the sun is coming up and the last hour of light when the sun is going down. If you shoot with the sun directly overhead, no matter what you do, you're going to get an ugly look because the sun is casting harsh shadows under the eyes, and it's the same as putting a light directly above your subject. During golden hour, there is no harsh shadows and the light is much more appealing. Now, these 3 shots were taken at the same day, one at 7 a.m., one at 12 p.m., and the other at 7 p.m. If you were to choose which one looks the best, it would be an easy choice. It would be the first one and the last one. And all I did was shoot at a certain time of day. Personally, during golden hour, I like to put the sun behind my subject and shoot into the sun. This will not only give you a very cinematic look, but will also give you beautiful lens flares. And if you plan accordingly, you can sometimes capture lots of detail in the sky when the sun is starting to go down. Shooting any other time will result in a blown out sky, but choosing to shoot during golden hour will increase the cinematic quality of your films immediately. Next is a catch light or an eye light. And this is the reflection of the source of light in your subject's eyes. Now, most people don't really think about this, but a catch light or an eye light gives your subject life. It gives them a soul. It makes them feel alive. They even put white spots in the eye of an animated character to make them feel alive. Yet those older animations that don't have that white spot feel dead and lifeless and like a shark. Some filmmakers have actually used this to communicate life and communicate death. In King Kong, when Kong dies at the top of the Empire State Building, that eye light fades away. Now, this wouldn't happen in real life, but like I said, the eye light is what makes people feel alive. So whenever they remove that, you know as the audience that he's dead. In The Gray, when Liam Neeson finds himself surrounded by wolves, there is no light in his eyes because he's accepting his fate. But when he decides to fight to the death, that eye light comes back. Life in the fight for survival has been given back to him and communicated to the audience by having a reflection in his eye. With all that being said, just make sure that when you're lighting your subject, you can see that eye light. And if you can't, try moving the light around just a little bit to get that slight reflection. And finally, step number 8 is texture. Now, like it or not, fog and haze completely change lighting. One shot might look okay, but adding just a little bit of haze and a little bit of fog, and it looks like you've just purchased thousands of dollars worth of lights and maybe even upgraded your camera. And that's what I love about fog. It's something so simple, yet can completely change your image. And at the same time, nobody is using it. It doesn't make sense. Now, one little trick that I learned with haze that's amazing is that if you're wanting to get fog outside, it's really difficult and it's really expensive. But not if you use an insect fogger. On Amazon, you can buy these foggers that are meant to repel insects. What you're supposed to do is put insect repellent in it and then spray a giant mist on everything to kill a bunch of bugs. Well, instead, if you use mineral oil or fog juice, it turns an insect repellent into an incredible outdoor fog machine. Now, I would never use this indoors because it's just way too powerful, but outside scenes now look incredible with a simple bug repellent. And of course, I'll have all the links to these in the description below. So now that we know the 8 steps, let's take all of these steps and put them together to make one beautiful cinematic shot. Now, here is our scene. We have our subject sitting in a chair playing the cello. And if we add a light to our subject, it looks fine. I mean, it's fine, it's passable. And this is where many filmmakers would actually stop. But let's take these steps and I'll show you the difference. Our first step is shooting shadow side. Now, the light right now is on the key side of our subject's face. So we need to move the light to the other side of his face, which puts us on the shadow side. Number 2 is lighting direction. As you can see, even though we're on the shadow side, it's still pretty frontal lighting. So let's move the light to a 45-degree angle to get that Rembrandt lighting on our subject's face and add more shadows. 3, 4, and 5 is motivated lighting, backlight, and depth. And I placed all of these together because Each one is kind of necessary for the other. First, we need to motivate our key light. So let's simply take a lamp and place it on the same side of our subject and on the same side of our key light. Now the key light is motivated by the lamp in the back. This is also lighting up our background a little bit as well and separating our subject. Next is the background. And even though the lamp is helping a little bit, I do want something on the other side. So we're actually going to turn on the fireplace over here. And even though it isn't really giving off much light at all, it's adding some interesting element to the background. And not only is it an interesting element, but it's also adding some depth by creating a color contrast. But let's add even more color contrast, though, by motivating some light from the fire. We're going to add an orange light to the right side of our subject to look like it's coming from the fire. And again, not only is this light motivated by the fire, but it gives us a really great contrast from the LED key light on our subject's face. And continuing with the background, I really don't like this random door here, and I also don't like the dark window. So we're going to add another light outside of the window shining inward. This brightens up the background, separates our subject, and also adds some cool texture from the blinds to the left side of the frame. And then finally, let's add some haze. And not only does it soften the overall look of the entire image, but look what it does to the window. Amazing. The first image we did doesn't look horrible because our subject is lit well and many filmmakers would probably be satisfied with this. But by taking these 8 steps, you can change an acceptable image into a cinematic image, all by using cheap lights and a $30 fog machine from Amazon. So thanks again for watching. If you'd like to learn every single aspect of filmmaking.
Yeah, so I like that video, just showing different ways you can set up your lighting to get, different looks and different styles. And I learned a lot from this video when it first came out, and I first watched it like 2 years ago. And so this taught me a lot about lighting and creating motivational lighting and depth and direction and, all of that. And it really does make a difference. Any questions with lighting, Elijah?
No questions about lighting.
Okay. Let's see what else we got. So let's see what we got.
Also means giving your lights a cooler color.
Okay. So this is the lighting part 2 for Studio Binder. I'll just play this and then make some notes, and then we can talk about it a little bit more as well. First, I'm gonna take a 5-minute break, use the bathroom. I'll be right back. All right. Back. So let's play this through.
Films are made up of sequences. Sequences are made up of scenes. And scenes are made up of shots. In previous episodes, we covered editing transitions, composition, and lighting fundamentals. Today, we'll focus on cinematic lighting and different ways to light subjects and their surroundings.
Lights up.
This is episode 13 of The Shot List. Cinematic Lighting, Part 2. Hit subscribe and enable notifications to get all future episodes of The Shot List. At the end of the video, we'll explain how to download our free ebook on cinematic lighting. In Part 1, we laid out the fundamentals of cinematic lighting, including the types of light, the qualities of light, essential terminology, and the most commonly used equipment when lighting a scene. In Part 2, we'll provide a step-by-step guide to lighting a scene, starting with the various styles and lighting setups for a subject. There are many ways to light a subject. It all comes down to intention. How is the subject feeling? What do we want the audience to understand about this character at this moment? This intention will guide your lighting choices. And while there are countless ways to light a subject, let's discuss the most popular methods. Arguably, the most common way to light a subject is with three-point lighting, which has three light sources directed at the subject: the key light, fill light, and backlight. The key light is the primary and strongest light. The fill light fills in the shadows created by the key light. The final light in the three-point setup is the backlight. This light is directed at the subject from behind and creates a rim of light around the subject's edges, separating them from the background. The fill light is usually less strong and more diffused. To create a low-key image, the fill light will be very dim or even non-existent. For a high-key or low-contrast image, the fill will be closer in strength to the key light. Negative fill is the process of blocking any unwanted fill light to increase the contrast. The difference between the fill and the key will affect the contrast ratio, which refers to the difference between light and shadow in an image. This allows for a fill to influence the mood of a scene. Types of backlights include edge lights or kickers that focus on a particular area of the subject. And hair lights are usually angled down onto the subject's head to create highlights in the hair. Catch lights, sometimes called eye lights, are the tiny reflections of a light source in the eyes, which help give them some life and depth. In this scene from the Grand Budapest Hotel, Wes Anderson and cinematographer Robert Yeoman employ a large key light hanging over the two subjects and some backlight provided by distant practicals. Using a diffused key light along with multiple dim backlights creates a high-key image with soft lighting.
Well, it begins, as it must, with our mutual friend's predecessor.
But the lighting on Mr. Mustafa changes, signaling a shift in the story.
The beloved original concierge of the Grand Budapest. It begins, of course, with...
The key light dims down, and now the fill light becomes the key. Behind Mr. Mustafa, a hair light brightens, perhaps motivated by the practicals on the wall. The various combinations and arrangements of these lights create commonly used subject lighting setups. Rembrandt lighting can be achieved through a three-point setup, placing the key light slightly higher and dimming the fill light, creating a signature triangle of light on the darker side of the subject's face, named after the light Rembrandt used on his subjects. Butterfly lighting, also known as paramount lighting, uses only two lights, featuring a key light that is placed directly in front of the subject at a high angle. It creates a butterfly-shaped shadow under a subject's nose and is often used for glamorous shots, highlighting cheekbones and smoothing out imperfections. Loop lighting is a similar approach, but the light is set at a 45-degree angle from the subject's face and placed just above their eye line. Loop lighting can appear to lengthen the face of a subject, so it's often used on actors with oval-shaped faces. There's also split lighting, which refers to a key light hitting half of a subject with no fill light, creating a dramatic image, often building a feeling of ominous mystery. There is also overhead and underlighting. Overhead or top lighting positions the light over the head of the actor, which can be used to obscure the eyes.
Now, behold how swiftly your brother swings his sword.
And underlighting places the light under the subject. Underlighting can be seen in classic horror films because of the unnatural-looking shadows on the face. Both approaches create distinguished shadows and can emphasize the bone structure of a subject's face.
Well, you have actually excellent bone structure there. I'm kind of having a hard time not looking at you now. Is that weird?
But of course, some of your shots might contain multiple subjects. When shooting more than one character, a cinematographer needs to consider where our attention needs to be directed. Are all the subjects equally important? Or are one or two meant to stand out?
Welcome, James. It's been a long time.
Many of the general rules of single-subject lighting pertain to lighting multiple subjects. Often, each subject in the frame will have a key light on their face, and light acting as a fill, and a backlight separating them from the background. But this doesn't mean each subject needs their own set of 3 lights. With smart blocking and light positioning, one light can act as a key light for 2 or more characters, or a key light for one character and a fill light for another. A similar technique is cross-key lighting, also called back-cross lighting, where lights positioned behind the actors act as a key for one character and a backlight for the other. This is especially useful for DIY projects with multiple cameras and a limited number of lights.
Dude, I didn't realize we were making Ben-Hur.
On Elvis, cinematographer Mandy Walker took things a step further by pre-lighting her sets for 360 degrees, since she needed to work with lots of movement and carefully considered blocking for several subjects at once.
Thank you. So you better just give me a minute or give me a second. I'm back in this thing and I'm ready to set it on.
But to ensure the lighting wasn't flat and overly generalized, she had a best boy hold a portable LED eye light attached to a boom pole, so that the main character would always have a glint in his eye, no matter where he's facing.
I'm gonna show you what the real Elvis is like tonight.
Lighting subjects can be just half your battle. Lighting a location can involve more complex setups that require dozens of different light sources. But they all add up to this. What mood are you trying to establish? Cinematographers usually aim for their lighting to be motivated by a location. Sometimes they'll take liberties, creating more stylized lighting. Other times, they stick more closely to reality with naturalistic lighting. Let's look at some approaches for different locations, starting with exterior day. Lighting exteriors during the day can be deceptively difficult. Usually, a cinematographer is at the whim of the sun. And not all sunlight is created equal. Light during the golden hour is much less harsh than lighting at noon. And so, pre-production for an outdoor shoot needs to be keenly aware of the time of day. For most cinematographers, shooting with the sun directly on a subject's face is generally avoided. So often, subjects will be placed with their backs to the sun, so that the light can be bounced on their faces more softly, and the sun can act as a backlight. Alternatively, on larger sets, a giant screen may be used to diffuse or block out the sun entirely to avoid overexposure, which refers to too much light hitting the camera's sensor. For more on exposure, check out our videos on the subject, linked below. Of course, the sun may not always cooperate, as cinematographer Gavin Finney explains.
I think the hardest thing is lack of predictability. I think if it's consistent, I just want consistency. If it's sunny, I want it to stay sunny. If it's cloudy, I want it to stay cloudy.
Let's look at a scene that takes place in full sunlight.
Meeting in the middle of the desert always made me nervous. It's a scary place.
On Casino, cinematographer Robert Richardson had to contend with the desert sun. At first, Richardson wanted to use the sun conventionally as a backlight. But Martin Scorsese wanted to shoot the scene using 2 cameras at once to catch improvisation, so Richardson's plan went out the window. Instead, only Nicky has a backlight, while Sam is directly in the sun.
You said I'm bringing heat on you? I gotta listen to people because of your fish? You're ordering me out? You better get your own army, pal.
I didn't do anything. I didn't know what he...
According to Richardson, the result was a far more saturated visual look, pulling and using the blues of the desert sky in strong contrast to the almost white, dry lake feel of the landscape. On The Revenant, director of photography Emmanuel Lubezki used the low sun of a Canadian winter to his advantage, shooting with as much natural light as possible. To do this, he shot on digital cameras, the Arri Alexa M and XTs. This allowed more flexibility with the ever-changing light, since it could shoot at a high ISO with almost no detectable grain. For Lubezki, his lighting strategy entirely relied on the time of day. At 1 p.m. in bright sunshine, there would not be anything of any interest in terms of atmosphere. But at 4:30 p.m., when the sun disappeared behind a mountain, the same location would then look mysterious. Lubezki's digital imaging technician, or DIT, needed to constantly be updating the camera's iris settings to keep brightness continuity from shot to shot. Having little control over light on set also meant that the coloring process was more involved. Lubezki worked with Steve Scott to darken backgrounds and lighten faces in post. The Revenant cinematography shows that you don't need massive, expensive lights to combat the sun when shooting outside. If you use location and time to your advantage, the sun can do the work for you. But this isn't the case when shooting exteriors at night. When shooting outside, cinematographers are tasked with creating light that doesn't feel unnaturally bright, but also avoids underexposure from too little light reaching the camera's sensor, making the image indiscernible. Of course, night exteriors can take a variety of forms, from a dark forest to a bustling city. In a rural setting, a cinematographer will often establish a base light, a non-directional light that makes sure nothing is completely lost in black shadows. This allows colorists to have more control over shadows in post-production. To achieve moonlight, DPs will often use moon cubes, a large box filled with heavy diffusers. Or for an even larger area, a Musco light may be employed. Simulating moonlight also means giving your lights a cooler color temperature.
I'm gonna go back there.
Moonlight tends to be around 4100 Kelvin. If a cinematographer wants certain elements in the background to be more visible, they can also use specials, smaller lights that are hidden in frame. Usually a soft light will also be applied on the subjects, but occasionally more directional equipment may be used for a more stylized look. Prey relies heavily on nighttime exteriors. To achieve a soft moonlight look, director of photography Jeff Cutter used soft boxes with 18 sky panel 360s. The crew then hoisted the lights on 80-foot lifts to achieve a high angle. For key lights, Cutter would often use balloons, which were smaller and more mobile, but still very diffused.
I want to see that again. So you can see how at night it's harder to get natural light because there's not much natural light. So you have to either get light from something like a fire or the moon, if your camera is able to pick that up, or have artificial light make it look natural, right? So if you're shooting at night like this isn't natural light from the moon. They had to use light from outside source. So they use like that pole with the balloon light or something else to create that light where it looks like moonlight is hitting the subject, but it's not, because the moon is not that bright. So they had to use artificial light to make it seem like it was the moonlight, even though it wasn't.
Exteriors. To achieve a soft moonlight look, director of photography Jeff Cutter used soft boxes with 18 sky panel 360s. The crew then hoisted the lights on 80-foot lifts to achieve a high angle. For key lights, Cutter would often use balloons, which were smaller and more mobile, but still very diffused. To get a cyan color that mimicked the moon, the color temperature on the lights was set to between 6,000 and 8,000 Kelvin. This resulted in a deep blue, which was corrected in post-production to look slightly greener.
Yeah. I'm just not projecting it because there's nobody in it. Okay.
Many shots utilized firelight. Cutter augmented the natural warm glow of the fire with tungsten incandescent lights, which have a warm color temperature to match the flames. But Cutter ensured the blue moonlight didn't disappear in these shots, adding blue to smoke and shadows. But you don't have to rely on massive light rigs to pull off your nighttime shots. In The Witch, Robert Eggers and DP Jaron Blaschke opted to shoot on a digital camera Arri Alexa Plus 4x3 in order to shoot in much darker contexts and use the natural moonlight. According to Blaschke, shooting with natural light was a responsibility. The actors are all in these really period-accurate costumes, and we have sets made with traditional techniques. To then put out a kino flow would just be a betrayal. Any shadows that resulted from the technique only add to the horror. But you aren't always going to be shooting outside, which leads us to interior day. Shooting inside usually means having more control over the light. Artificial lights can always be turned off. This means that lighting can often be more nuanced. And because the audience expects artificial lighting, a cinematographer can use practicals, lights that appear in a frame. Because of this, the quality and source of light in interior day scenes can vary drastically. From scenes that rely on window light, like this one from Her, to scenes where exterior light is barely present at all.
Mark! He's wired in. Sorry? He's wired in. Is he? Yes.
For The Whale, DP Matthew Livertique decided on the latter, lighting his interior sparsely to match the dire mood present at all. Her, to scenes where exterior light is barely present at all.
Mark! He's wired in. Sorry? He's wired in. Is he? Yes.
For The Whale, DP Matthew Livertique decided on the latter, lighting his interior sparsely to match the dire mood of the film and its protagonist. Livertique shot on a Sony Venice, which could shoot at low light with an ISO of 2500. This allowed him to light primarily using practical lights like lamps, which don't emit as much illumination as film lights. Using practicals also meant that Livertique was lighting from the floor, leaving much of the house in pockets of shadows.
No, without this thing. Just stand up and walk over here.
I can't really.
Shut up! Come over here.
Roger Deakins, meanwhile, has shot daytime interiors that have almost no indoor lights. In this scene from Sicario, Deakins lit the interior solely through the windows. He used T12 Fresnels to create the feeling of harsh sunlight, while 2K Blondes also provided a flat fill light to the scene. Smoke and dust, meanwhile, act as natural diffusers and allow Deakins to employ volumetric lighting, a technique that gives light shape, like the beams in the hallway. By lighting an interior almost completely from the outside, Deakins emphasizes that the building is abandoned and only has one use. Lighting strategies change when shooting interiors at night. Interior night lighting relies even more on artificial light, since there's no sun coming in from the windows. Interior light can take many forms, from the warm candlelight in Barry Lyndon to the pale fluorescence in Chungking Express. In this basement scene from Inglourious Bastards, there is very little outside light.
Eric, mon chéri, das sind die Freunde, auf die ich gewartet habe. Bitte gib ihm alles, was sie möchten.
Frau von Hammersmark, Ihr Wunsch ist mir Befehl.
Cinematographer Robert Richardson created a baselight by hanging tungsten bulbs from the ceiling, which were diffused with 2 layers of muslin. As the tension in the scene escalates, the lighting grows more dramatic, Richardson added park and top lights and backlights, which are more harsh and directional. The harsh top light increased the contrast of the shot, and the backlight further removed the principal actors from their backgrounds.
It would appear there's only one thing left for you to do.
And what would that be?
Stinklets.
Say auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi boss.
The lighting then changes once more when the shootout begins, becoming even more directional through the smoke. Through a gradual change in lighting, Richardson was able to enhance the dramatic beats of the scene. On Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick and cinematographer Larry Smith opted to use window light to create a stylized look, exaggerating the difference between interior light and moonlight by increasing their difference in color temperature. Most of the interior nighttime apartment scenes were lit with practical lights, which naturally have a warm color temperature. This orange light was contrasted with a deep blue coming in from the window. As Larry Smith explains, the blue we used was very saturated, much bluer than natural moonlight would be. But we didn't care about that. We just went for a hue that was interesting.
Dallas, it's okay. It's okay.
The blue color was obtained with open-faced clear glass arcs. These lights were also quite directional and created strong beams that were picked up by shooting on a T1.3 stop and using a Tiffin LC1 filter. Both camera elements gave the interior lighting a soft glow. Smith heightened the color contrast in his close-ups. Depending on the desired color, he would use blue Chinese lanterns, or he would dim the practicals, which made them even warmer. As Smith notes, most of the movie is at either extreme, either very rich and warm, or very blue and cold. Kubrick and Larry Smith's work on Eyes Wide Shut shows us that nighttime interiors can have very different color palettes, and it all depends on the nature of the room and the desired effect.
Bill, I have seen one or two things in my life, but never anything like this.
Of course, there are exceptions to every norm we've laid out in this video. Cinematographers prove again and again that rules are meant to be broken. Abiding by rules or not, lighting is one of the most important elements of any film. With the right lighting tools and setup, from subject to subject, to set, a shot can go from good to unforgettable. Tell us some of your favorite lighting examples in the comments below. In the description, you'll find a link to download an ebook on cinematic lighting, covering everything from this two-part series. That's all for now. Until next time, remember, some lights never go out.
Yeah, so it was a lot of lighting content today. But hopefully that gave you some insight on how lighting is done in movies, right? I know when I was a kid, I used to watch movies. I used to always think, how do they get it to look like that? Like, is the sunlight that powerful? Is the moonlight that powerful that can get that? But then the more I researched it and tried stuff out for myself, I saw, well, a lot of that was artificial lighting. Some of it was natural light, but a lot of it was artificial, and they made it look natural. And it's like, oh, okay. So if you have a gaffer, a good cinematographer, a good visual team, you can create some cool stuff that looks realistic. And I think that's the whole point of it. Well, not all the time. Like in Eyes Wide Shut, I was going to say, like, the point of it is to make it look realistic. It doesn't necessarily have to look realistic. Like in Eyes Wide Shut, they wanted to go for something interesting. They didn't really care about if the moonlight really looked like that or that saturated. They just wanted something to look interesting and cool, which they achieved that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's really no right or wrong for anything. It's just a matter of what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for today. Next week, we'll cover some other topics, and then we'll move forward. So if there's no questions, Elijah, you can stay on with Elaine. She'll hop on in about 5 minutes, and then yeah, have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Thanks.
enforcing the law. I don't think
I knew you would be running.
hold on. Trying to add my headphones because it's kind of loud in here. Let me see. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the so, okay, today we are going to go over. I have a short video for you, and then we're going to talk about privacy, data privacy, because it's so important when we're talking about video games and the information that we share. What should be shared, what's inappropriate, how to protect ourselves from sharing too much data in order to, protect our credit, like data privacy. Data privacy and protection is what we're going to go over today. So first I'm going to show you a short video to kind of give you an idea of what data privacy is, what you should be looking for, how to protect yourselves, and then we will talk about how it impacts esports. Here we go. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen, Elijah?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to press play and I hope you can hear it.
Data privacy or information privacy is a branch of data security concerned with the proper handling of data. More specifically, data privacy concerns often revolve around whether or how data is shared with third parties, how data is legally collected or stored, and regulatory restrictions. Privacy of information is extremely important in this digital age where everything is interconnected and can be accessed and used easily. The possibilities of our private information being extremely vulnerable are very real, which is why we require data privacy. Data privacy is the necessity to preserve and protect any personal information collected by any organization from being accessed by a third party. It is a part of information technology that helps an individual or an organization determine what data within a system can be shared with others and which should be restricted. Simply put, data privacy is the right of an individual not to have private information about himself disclosed, and to live freely from surveillance and intrusion. Personal information is any information which can be linked to your identity, thus making you readily identifiable. There are two drivers for why data privacy is one of the most significant issues in the industry. Data is one of the most important assets a company has. With the rise of the data economy, companies find enormous value in collecting, sharing, and using data. Companies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon have all built empires atop the data economy. Transparency in how business request consent, abide by their policies, and manage the data that they've collected is vital to building trust and accountability with customers and partners who expect privacy. Many companies have learned the importance of privacy the hard way through highly publicized privacy fails. Second, privacy is the right of an individual to be free from uninvited surveillance, to safely exist in one's space and freely express one's opinion. Organizations commonly believe that keeping sensitive data secure from hackers means they are automatically compliant with data privacy regulations. This is not the case. Data security and data privacy are often used interchangeably, but there are distinct differences. Data security protects data from compromise by external attackers and malicious insiders, while data privacy governs how data is collected, shared, and used. Consider a scenario where you've gone to great lengths to secure personally identifiable information. The data is encrypted, access is restricted, and multiple overlapping monitoring systems are in place. However, if that personal identifiable information was collected without proper consent, you could be violating a data privacy regulation even though the data is secure. Any personal data that could be sensitive or can be used maliciously by someone is included when considering data privacy. These data types include the following: online privacy. This includes all personal data that is given out during online interactions. Most sites have a privacy policy regarding the use of the data shared by users or collected from users. Financial privacy. Any financial information shared online or offline is sensitive as it can be utilized to commit fraud. Medical privacy. Any details of medical treatment and history is privileged information and cannot be disclosed to a third party. There are very stringent laws regarding sharing of medical records. Residential and geographic records. Sharing of address online can be a potential risk and needs protection from unauthorized access. Political privacy. This has become a growing concern that political preferences should be privileged information. Now, let's talk about the Data Privacy Act. In 2012, the Philippines passed Republic Act number 10173, or the Data Privacy Act of 2012. It was passed in accordance with the Philippines agreements under ASEAN Vision 2020 and at the urging of the growing business process outsourcing industry. It is the policy of the state to protect the fundamental human right of privacy, of communication while ensuring free flow of information to promote innovation and growth. The National Privacy Commission is the country's privacy watchdog, an independent body mandated to administer and implement the Data Privacy Act of 2012 and to monitor and ensure compliance of the country with the international standards set for data protection. Its vision is to be a world class regulatory and enforcement agency upholding the right to privacy and data protection while ensuring the free flow of information. Committed to excellence, driven by a workforce that is highly competent, future oriented, and ethical, towards a competitive, knowledge based, and innovative nation. It shall continuously deliver services to be the authority on data privacy and protection, providing knowledge, know how, and relevant technology. To establish a regulatory environment that ensures accountability in the processing of personal data and promotes global standards for data privacy and protection, and to build a culture of privacy through people empowerment that enables and upholds the right to privacy and supports free flow of information. The major functions of the National Privacy Commission are as follows: rulemaking, advisory. The NPC is the advisory body on matters related to personal data protection. Public education. The NPC shall launch initiatives to educate the public about data privacy, data protection, and fair information rights and responsibilities. Compliance and monitoring. The body has compliance and monitoring functions to ensure personal information controllers comply with the law. It is also tasked to manage the registration of personal data processing systems. Personal information controller is an individual or institution or any other body who controls the processing of personal data or instructs another to process personal data on its behalf. Complaints and investigations and enforcement. Here are the references of this lesson.
Been talking this whole time and my mic was muted. Oh my.
I didn't. You definitely don't want to get the goose egg right there.
No. I'm so sorry. So now we're gonna go over how game companies, the importance of data and privacy and how game companies can protect their data. First, we'll talk about why player data and privacy is important, because that's very important to know. What are some challenges that we see and some threats? We'll also go over how game companies protect players and data privacy, the benefits and opportunity, and we'll go over some resources and examples. This is important because this is specifically important because it's a as we advance in technology, as technology advances, and we know that it's becoming more and more common, more and more users out there, even in esports, we're getting more and more information to anyone or in the ether, right? the internet is this vast place, and everyone might be asking for some personal information like your birthday, your full name, your social security number, which is a no-no, right? Your bank account. How can we make sure when we're providing those things that might be important for the game or might be important for the company that you are maybe trying to buy or use the game, it might be important for them to collect that data, but are they protecting that data? So why is player data and privacy important? Tons of reasons. But why do you think it's important?
I mean, player data and privacy is important because if your player data is being shown onto public, well, either if it's the people you choose, well, you, I mean, you have to enhance the trust and loyalty of the players who expect personal information preferences. But you don't want to go over the you don't want to go too overboard with yourself, because if you show out too much of your personal information, well, I think someone might accuse you of something, and maybe maybe just maybe they would know that they could just uh, they could just steal the information,
and we don't want that. And what can you do when they steal your information? What can they use that information for?
well, if your information is private, that means you have to keep it to yourself.
Absolutely. But it's also because if you want to keep it to yourself, but personal information need to be respected and protected by gaming companies. That is important. If you want to enhance trust and loyalty, if I felt like, hey, if Elijah gives me his name and his address, and I give your name and address to other people, would you trust me?
Well,
no, right? Like, why am I giving out your personal information?
If I do that, something tells me I made a mistake, and I have to do the right thing.
Absolutely. So we don't want to share people's personal information, and we don't want people to share our personal information either, right?
Right.
And so after that, so that's one thing to think about. And now, um, it's not very kind. It's not very, now I don't trust you. Now I might be losing trust. And if I can't trust you, then am I going to continue to play your video game?
Uh, would you rather not do it?
Well, right. So if I feel like I can't trust you, then I'm likely not going to stay loyal to you, meaning I won't continue to use your services or play your game if I feel like I can't trust you, or you're sharing information that I would ask you not to share. Information that I'm kind of sharing with you in secret. That's what privacy information is, right? Personal information that you might share, and you might need to share it, but I'm not expecting you to share with anyone else. But it's also important because privacy information allows gaming companies to create kind of a personalized experience, right? We want you to have an engaging experience. I might need to know how old you are, and that could determine what kind of games I offer you. Versus, if, hey, I log in and I'm an adult, and the company only gives me games that are relevant for babies, am I going to be interested in that? Not so much, right? Um, so the contents and features become important if I can create an experience based on some of the information you provide. It might be private information, but it can be based on your demographic. You know, you live in Chicago, I might provide content that's relevant to Chicago, and it might allow you to enjoy this experience more. But if I provide that information to you and you specialize my experience, I'm still expecting you to keep it personal and private, right? In order to ensure that we're keeping our privacy, or we're keeping personal information privacy. Gaming companies also have to comply with the laws and regulations that govern data protection and privacy, such as the GDPR in Europe or the CCPA in California. Now, if they do not comply, they will receive a fine, they will be sued, there'll be fines and lawsuits. And all of that costs money. So we don't, you know, as a company, I want to make sure I'm kind of on my best behavior and I'm following protocol because I do not want to be sued, right?
That's true. If you try to use it and you do get sued, well, life is going to be chaos for you.
Absolutely, life is going to be chaos. And that's not, and it's expensive. And so if I have to spend all my money in lawsuits, can I spend my money making this better? No, right? I can't spend my money making this game better for you or enhancing your experience. And then I might lose viewers, I might lose consumers, and then I might lose ultimately my business. Right.
Yeah.
No. What are some challenges and some threats, right? Have you heard of something called cyber attacks?
Cyber attacks. If I get the meme right, what are those?
Very funny.
So from time to time.
Never gets old. I love it. So, cyber attacks happen when people like hack your internet-based accounts, and then they use that information to maybe gain your bank account information or steal your identity, and maybe they'll open accounts. Um, They'll open your bank account. They'll use your name and open bank accounts in your name or open other accounts in your name. That's kind of identity theft or even reputational harm or damage for players and companies if I'm using your information and I'm holding you out to be something that you're not. And that community or our consumers, your fans may not be proud of. That harms your reputation. So when we have data breaches and cyber attacks, right now, we are legally required to inform our customers that the information they have provided to us has been leaked through our systems. And then oftentimes we offer a remedy, kind of like a credit monitoring or lock your credit, so people can't steal your identity and really kind of steal your money. So it's a challenge because the more that we grow in the internet sphere, um, the more we have to be aware. The more users we have, the more diligent we need to be. Because the more users we have equals the more hackers we have and the more advances in our technology. So we're trying to advance technology, but in the same way, that can also be a challenge. Um, Again, we have to always comply with different data protection and privacy laws, but not just in Chicago, not just in Illinois. Normally, companies do business in every state and or out the country. And so when they're doing business in every state and when they're doing business outside the country, seems like, well, they have to follow those privacy, data protections, and privacy laws everywhere they are. So you have to be very much so aware of what is going on and what are the expectations from you from a government perspective to make sure you're not violating any policies and procedures. Now, we talked about collecting data to improve their games or their products and services while still protecting player privacy and preferences. Although it may be difficult, it's important that we do it. And one way that we do it today, I mean, we use like a two-step verification. So, or we use a biometric. Maybe you can, you know, how you can open your phone with your thumbprint or open your bank account, an app on your phone using your thumbprint, or you can open your phone by using face recognition. Those are protections in place to ensure or decrease the likelihood that your data would be hacked, right? Sometimes you can put in a password and then they also have to send you a text message or an email with a code. And once they send you that message with a code, then they'll give you the information. And so that kind of stuff is really important so that we can always maintain uh, some type of safety and security over our private and personal information. Oh, I didn't mean to go that far. Yeah. So how can game companies protect data and privacy, right? Best practices, a variety of best practices, encryption and authentication methods, passwords. You know, you never want to use a password that's like your first and last name, right? That's really easy to guess. You never want to use a password that has your birth date in it or your social security number in it, or even your child's date of birth, security number, first and last name. You never even want to use an easy password like 12345 6 because that increases the likelihood that you may be hacked. My previous employer, we started to use what we call pass phrases. Do you know what a pass phrase is? Instead of a password, we had a pass phrase. Um, do you know what that is? Have you ever heard of that? Yeah. So a passphrase, instead of using like 8 characters, you would use like 30 characters, and your password would be something like
Wait, he used 30 characters?
30 characters for your password. And you at least 30 characters. And it will be a phrase. And it could be a phrase like, I watch movies on Friday. That whole phrase would be your password instead of, you know, using 8 characters. So now those things make it make it harder to be hacked and maybe easier to remember. Should you ever write your password on your laptop and leave it there? Should never do that, right?
Okay.
Never leave it or like sometimes obviously we want to always look at data governance and accountability policies, and that especially from a company perspective makes sure that we are not sharing or being negligent with other people's sensitive information. Keep your laptop down, you know, log out of your laptop when it's not in use, especially if you're not behind a locked door. Things like that are very important. Um, and these type of data security measures should be integrated into the game design and development. And then we want to educate our people, right? Educate employees who work for the company of what best practices look like. Why are they so important? Make sure they're diligent in their attempts to keep our data and our privacy protected. Inform your partners, anyone that you're working with, keep them educated and informed, as well as players and consumers. Not just about the importance of data protection and privacy, but what we are doing every single day to ensure your data is protected and we maintain your privacy. Because if I don't know, how am I supposed to do it, right? And then when I do know that you take this very seriously as a company or a corporation, then I will, if I know that, I'm more likely to be loyal. You can maintain a loyal customer that way. And ultimately, that's what we want to try to continue to do. Um, does that make sense? So companies can, there are a number of benefits and opportunities in protecting player data and privacy. Improve customer satisfaction and retention. The first thing people always want to know is how many stars will you give this, right? We always ask for a review of our products. And the more positive reviews mean it's more likely that people will engage, more likely people that will continue to support this company. And if that's the case, you may also benefit from government funding, or not just your consumer base, but there may be grants or government funds that you are able to secure because you're doing such a good job in your data privacy and protection. So that's important. It's really important. Retention is important because it's easier for me. What I want long term is to have more employees who are long term. I would just like not employees. I want consumers that kind of pay $30 a month, than a consumer that pay $30 one month and never comes back. I want you to look at if I have a subscription, I want it to be a benefit for you. And if you subscribe and love the content and love the protection and feel valued as a customer and trust me, it's likely that I can retain you as a customer and you'll continue to pay every single month, right? And if I'm having a good experience, what do I then
About
do?
the whole 30 characters thing, I'm like, can you really do that? And that's
They can really do that.
I didn't see that coming.
You can really do that.
That's a lot of characters.
It is. But you think somebody can hack you if you have that many characters? Do you think it'll be easier or harder for someone to crack your password?
Yeah, I think you have to keep your password super private. So I think I read a strong password that no hacker would get into.
No hacker will get into. And if your password was something like 30 characters, do you think it'll be easier or harder for a hacker to figure it out?
I think I'm going to make my password a lot harder for the hackers.
A lot harder for the hackers, and that's why we do it. Because it makes your password a lot harder, and that is important. Um, that's important. So it's also a competitive advantage. So in the gaming market, when you can offer a more secure and personalized experience, players likely will start preferring you over other games, right? Or other companies. It's competition. So companies end up competing to see who has the best gaming content, who has the best protections, and they can leverage that data in order to increase their players, increase their fans, their consumers, and offer more innovative games and services and enter into new markets. So now, when I know as a parent, for example, that my privacy is protected, I might be more inclined to allow my child to engage in this too, right? Now my child can use this service and I feel like my child is protected. Now you have an adult demographic market and a market that's geared toward children. So it's allowed you to expand your reach. The same may be true if I told my grandparents about it. So now that my grandparents are aware, then they could likely be, now they've expanded their reach to another demographic or another market that targets elderly, our elderly market. So it's important when you have those kinds of benefits because then your market approach can expand and offer you, it obviously is more lucrative to do that because now all of these people want to join my services, want to pay for this game, or may engage in this activity. I'm able to accommodate them all. And with the advancements in technology, I'll continue to advance my privacy and protections, right? Whatever those looks like, I'll make sure I'm in line with protection laws and I can create more innovative games and more innovative content. And now I'm reaching a broader base, which is best case scenario. So when we talk about some data protections and some resources, one resource is the International Game Developers Association, IGDA, a global network of game developers that provide resources, guidance, and advocacy on various topics. So when you start to create your own content or you're creating your own game, you're developing your own company or corporation, and you know that you might need sensitive data, this is a resource for you to use to kind of reach out and get a better understanding of what kind of data, or how to protect the data that you are collecting. It's international, which is important because the expectation, we want to grow as large as possible. So we don't want to limit ourselves to just the United States. We want to figure out, because the internet, again, is so vast and the reach is so wide, we want to realize how many people we can reach and how we can protect all of those people all over the world and not just in our geographical area. What they have that's really specific is a data rights working group, and they publish papers and reports and recommendations on data protection and privacy issues and best practices for game developers. Again, some of these data protection mechanisms can be embedded in the game that you are developing, which is important. As we talk about innovation, that's another innovative concept that you can leverage, and the IGDA will help us get there. We also have the Entertainment Software Association, which is a trade association. This one is specific to US, and it helps represent the US game industry, advocating for its specific interests and policies. It has a private policy generator to help game developers create privacy policies that comply with US laws and regulations. This is also important because it's not enough to just have the privacy mechanism in place, but you have to, oftentimes, your users have to acknowledge that you have it. In order for them to acknowledge that you have it, you have to create a policy. They have to be able to review it. They'll check or click off that they've reviewed it and that they're acknowledging the data and privacy in place. It's the benefits and potentially the limitations. So that's important to keep in mind when we start thinking about ways when we are developing our own systems, we can create our own policies and procedures through this particular trade association to make sure we are in compliance with U.S. laws and regulations. And then we have the Fair Play Alliance. And this kind of consists of game companies that kind of join together, and they are promoting fair play and healthy communities in online games. So that this particular organization is not limited to data and protection, but they do have a privacy data ethics framework that outlines the principles and practices for game companies. The expectation is that you'll respect player data and privacy, and that again fosters trust amongst players, which again allows us to broaden our reach, allows us to tap into geographical locations across the world and not just, here in the United States, and gives us a broad reach on demographic, be it age, gender, ethnicity, things of that nature. So we want to kind of bridge the gap in a way that allows us to, collect kind of personal information and data while keeping it private and, enhancing your individual experiences. Does that make sense? I know it was a lot. But I wanted to make sure I got all the information. Do you have any questions for me?
Apparently, I don't.
Okay. Well, I know we kind of breezed through that a little bit, but that's all the content that I have for the day. I'll give you a couple of minutes back, and then you can stay on, and Aramis will be here with you shortly.
Okie dokie.
All right. Good talking to you, Elijah.
All right, now talk to you. Talk to you next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Elijah, what's going on?
Hey, Aramis, everything's going good.
Good, good. All right. So, give me 1 second. All right, Elijah. So first, let me start off by saying, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Intro to Music Production. My name is Aramis Singleton. And today, Elijah, we're going to go over the money chords, right? Or the 1 to 4 5 chords, right? Now, do you know what the money chords are by any chance?
The money chord?
Yes, do you know what the money chords are? And if you don't, it's fine.
I don't.
It's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's what this class is for, right? Want to help you understand what the money chords are. So the money chords, or the 1 to 4 5 chords, are 3 sets of chords that you kind of hear in popular music all the time, like that you most likely hear in popular music all the time. So when I mean pop, so when I say popular music, it's not just quote unquote pop music, right? Like Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, Chappelle Rowan. No, I'm talking about popular music. So rap, hip hop, hip hop, R&B, pop music, rock music, alternative rock, country, popular music, right? Music that we all take in, period, right? Um, 3 chords are usually played within music. The 1 to 4 5 chords are the money chords. The reason why they're called the money chords is because these are the chords that you usually hear in the top 25, top 10, top 5 songs. So that means they make a lot of money, right? So let's think about this real quick, right? When you think about the money, when you think about popular songs, you think of Taylor Swift, you think of right now Chappelle Rowan, you think of Kendrick Lamar, you think of Beyonce, you think of um, Chappelle Rowan, you think of Doechii, right? You think of all of these different artists that come from all these different genres of music, all different walks of life, and they use these same 3 money chords. I mean the same 3 chords. Why? Because it's phonetically pleasing to your ear, right? When you hear these chords, they sound really good in your head. They sound really good to your ear, and you want to hear more. So a lot of the songs, like for even back in the, not say back in the day, but so even like 5, 10 years ago, like Katy Perry was everywhere, Rihanna, Future. I mean, he's here now still. Drake. You will hear these same 3 chords all the time. Now, with rap and hip hop, it's kind of different because with rap hip hop, we don't necessarily stay within the rules of quote unquote the quote unquote rules of music. Um, we pretty much kind of like break out that barrier for the most part. So we don't stay with the money chords, but we still use them though, right? So a lot of songs got produced by someone like a Pharrell Williams from the Neptunes or the Neptunes back in the day, Timbaland even now, Dr. Dre, you will hear those 3 chords, the 1, 4, 5 chords. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play this quick video, right? A quick video talking about the money chords. Um, I'm not gonna play the whole thing. If I can, let me see. Maybe 1 second. Okay, so this is the deal. This is the deal, Elijah. I'm not going to play the whole thing of this one video. I'm going to play some parts of it. I'm going to skip around. And then the next video I'm going to play is going to be video about chord progression, right? This class is pretty much going to be a really quick jump into music theory. So I'm going to play this video. Like I said, I'm going to play bits of it. I'm going to jump around, and then I'm going to play the other video on chord progression. And then I'm going to talk about it, and then probably be the end of class. Deal? Deal. All right, give me 1 second.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amy Nolte Music. This is my 3rd episode in my Back to Basics series for rock and pop piano. A cool thing happened this week. My husband, John, who you've probably seen on my channel a time or 2 before, watched my video. Well, he watches all my videos. He's awesome that way. But he did watch my video from last week and the week before, and he said, these are videos that I think can really help me. So I walked into our bedroom one day and he was sitting there with a guitar. It's something I haven't seen him do in a long time. And he was working on a song. I'll grab it to show you a little bit. But he was working on a song, like an old folk song that I think he had heard our daughter sing in her choir or something. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. And then he switched to F. Away, you rolling river. Back to C. Oh, Shenandoah. And he stayed right there. I long to hear you. Away. It sounds fine. I'm bound away across the wide Missouri. That's what he did. He just played 3 chords and it sounded fine. I said, yes, you've done it. That's right. You did take the 3 chords that I talked about and you made them work on a song that was great. Yeah, I probably said it better than that. But I said, you've reminded me of something, though. There are some other very easy chords that you already know on the guitar that will work a little bit better. And he goes, oh, good. He's like, there's some points in that song where I thought I should be playing a slightly different chord, but I didn't know what it was. That brings me to our lesson today. Slightly different chords that can substitute out to make the song sound even more right on the money than it already does with the 3 chords that we talked about earlier. So I brought John over to the piano and I said, I just got to show you something. We have talked about the key of C. We have talked about the 4 chord and the 5 chord. And I know that I mentioned a couple other chords. I think I mentioned A minor and D minor. And remember that when you play Heart and Soul, I said that D minor was a good substitute for F. So instead of going like this, you could go. Right, so I've briefly touched on it already, but I showed him, I said, you know, in the key of C, well, in any key, but when we're talking about a major key, we need to realize that there's a major scale and that you can build triads or chords upon every degree of the major scale just by playing one, skipping one, playing one, skipping one. So all you have to do is this. And you've played all of them. Now, almost all of those chords are used all the time in pop and rock music. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, except this one. This one is called B diminished, and it doesn't get used that much. But if we put a G on the bottom of it, it looks like G7, which does get used an awful lot. But so this is the only one we're going to kind of skip over today because it just doesn't get used that much in its, pure form as a diminished chord. The cool thing about playing these chords in the key of C is that it makes it really easy to notice a few things. We've got this C major chord, and when John was playing that song Shenandoah, he thought that C major sounded okay over part of it, but he wasn't so sure. He thought that he heard something else at one point, and so he was playing, oh Shenandoah, I long to hear you, and right at that point, like maybe A flat, and then you already know what your triads are because you know what the A flat scale is. And then you can play that same song in the key of A flat if you need to, just, by using numbers like John did for his song that I showed you earlier. But back to the key of C. Da 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 da
Okay, real quick, you see how she kind of plays the 3 same chords over and over. I mean, she played other chords in between, for the most part, the same 3 chords, right? those 3 chords you're playing right now could easily go into another song as smoothly and easy as it seems, right? So this song right here can absolutely go right into something like Spaghetti by Beyonce, or something like Fearless by Taylor Swift, or something like Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, right? Definitely something like Not Like Us, right? Or even more so like TV Off or Squabble Up, right? That's what the 3 chord theory can do for you, right? So right now, I'm going to X out of here, and I'm going to play another video. Just give me 1 second.
The highlighted notes sort of. Yo guys, it's Arcade, and today I'm gonna show you a foolproof technique on how to make chord progressions and how to never make a bad chord progression again. And yeah, there is no cheating involved. All of the chord progression you will make will be unique and yours, so pay attention. Also, this video is brought to you by Skillshare. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about them later. Now let's get started and let me show you how to do this. So, how to make great chord progressions if you don't know music theory? Well, it's simple. First, let's start with choosing our sound. The best one to choose probably is the piano, for starters. You can use any piano, you can use FL keys, you can use one from Labs, they actually have like a nice soft piano. We can also use one from FL Studio, which you will find in packs, instruments, keyboard, and it's called Close Grand. This one actually sounds pretty good. And a lot of people don't know about this one, but it's there and we're gonna use this one. So first we want to go to piano roll by right-clicking, choosing piano roll, and this is where we are going to work. So the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is to set it up. So this is how it should look. And if we go here to this arrow and we go to view, scale highlighting, we can actually choose what scale we want to work with. You can also do automatic, but it can be a little bit confusing for beginners because the automatic one can change from time to time. So I recommend just choosing your scale from the get-go. So let's do major, and let's go back and choose our key, and we can do key of C. You can choose any of these, but C will do for now. So now you can see the piano roll changed, and you have some highlighted notes and some darker ones. So the highlighted ones are the ones you can use, and the darker ones are the ones you shouldn't be using. Now you might have seen this in other tutorials, but I'm gonna show you how to navigate through this and how to make chords that always go well together. So to start it off, you can just choose any of these highlighted notes, which are the lighter ones. So let's go lower to C5. And let's start with C, then A, and F. So these are our bass notes. Now to make a chord, it's really simple. You leave 3 spaces in between the note, and then you put a note on the 4th one, and then you leave 2 spaces between and put a note on the 3rd one. And this is a major chord. And as you can see, if we stay in the right key, these will always be on the highlighted notes. So let's do it for the next one. But this time, if you want to leave 3 spaces, as I showed you before, and put a note on the 4th one, you'll land on the darker key, which is not highlighted, which means you cannot use it. So what happens then is you need to do a minor chord instead, which means you leave 2 spaces in between and put a note on the 3rd one, and then 3 spaces and put a note on the 4th one. So let me repeat that because it's a little bit confusing. You hear a lot of numbers, but if you want to create a major chord, there will be 3 spaces and then 2 spaces. And that's a major chord. And if you want to create a minor chord, there will be 2 spaces and then 3 spaces. As you could see, if you don't know whether to create a minor or major chord, well, the highlighted notes sort of tell you which one it needs to be, because it won't let you to create a minor chord if there needs to be a major chord. So just remember, you cannot use the darker notes, so always land on the highlighted one. So if you would want to create a minor chord here, which is 2 spaces and then 3, this is how it would look. But as you can see, we have it on the darker part of the grid, and it cannot be there. So you need to move this note on the highlighted one. And then we have a major chord, 3 spaces and 2 spaces. That being said, sometimes it happens that neither one of those works. So what do you do then? So let's see, if we go to C and then, there's B and it's highlighted, so we can use it, right? So we go to B. Now let's create that chord again. So we can see there's a highlighted note here, which is the third one, and leaving 2 spaces, which is good, right? We would think that we can do a minor chord here, but then you need 3 spaces and put a note on the fourth one, which is here. But this one is dark, so we cannot use it. And here is how it sounds. So if we do this, we actually are not following the right key. We are not in C major anymore. And if you want to use the highlighted one, you just create a weird chord that doesn't work. So what do you do in this case? If you want to stick to the right key, which you chose, you just don't use this chord because it doesn't fit in the key you are using. So if you end up in a situation where leaving 2 spaces and then 3 spaces, or 3 spaces and then 2 spaces doesn't end up on the highlighted notes, just do not use that chord. It is as simple as that. So just remove it and try another one, like right here. That works. So yeah, this is how you do it. It's actually really simple and it never fails. So as I said before, you don't really need music theory for this technique, but if you...
Yeah, real quick. He is right for the most part, but with rap, like I said, rap hip hop doesn't fit in the usual conventions of music, so we kind of break out of it. So this key that he played right here specifically,
to the right key, that is, we cannot put that here. That being said, one, and then we have a major chord, 3 spaces and 2 spaces. That being said, sometimes it happens that neither one of those work. But as you can see, notice that there's B and it's highlighted, so we can see that right. We end it, and here's how it sounds.
So that chord right there that he just played, sorry, I had to search through it, but that chord that he played right there, you can actually use that chord in rap hip hop and it would sound good. If you follow that convention, honestly, low key, you can make a really good beat, really banging beat. So.
So if we do this, we actually are not following the right key. We are not in C major anymore. And if you want to use the highlighted one, you just create a weird chord that doesn't work. So what do you do in this case? If you want to stick to the right key, which you chose, you just don't use this chord because it doesn't fit in the key you are using. So if you end up in a situation where leaving 2 spaces and then 3 spaces, or 3 spaces and then 2 spaces doesn't end up on the highlighted notes, just do not use that chord. It is as simple as that. So just remove it and try another one, like right here. That works. So yeah, this is how you do it. It's actually really simple and it never fails. So as I said before, you don't really need music theory for this technique. But if you do want to learn more about music theory and learn how to make chords and melodies, then check out Skillshare, the sponsor of today's video. Skillshare is a platform where you can learn a lot of new skills. It can be about video editing, graphic design, marketing, and even music, which is probably what you are the most interested in. So if you want to learn more about music theory, how to play the piano, how to use FL Studio, this would be the right place to go. You have tons of classes by professionals explaining everything in detail, and these are not like short YouTube videos. These are full classes that can take a while to watch, but they do teach you so much more. And right now I would recommend this class by Fernando Arruda, which is about music theory, but instead of explaining it on a piano, he explains it on a MIDI grid. So that is what I recommend. If you are more interested in learning about FL Studio, we can just type in FL Studio in the search bar and you'll have tons of classes about FL Studio for beginners and advanced users. So the first 1,000 people who click the link below will actually get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. That means you get access to all of these classes for 1 month for free. So check out the link below. I think it's a great opportunity to just improve your skills. Now let's get back to the video. So let's try a different scale. I'm gonna go here, view, scale highlighting, and I'm gonna do minor natural. So we have a minor scale now, and we have different notes that we can use and different ones that we cannot use. But same rules apply. So let's create an actual chord progression here. So I'm gonna start with C, then maybe A sharp. Something like this. So I chose my bass notes and now let's fill them out with chords, starting with C. Once again, 2 spaces or 3 spaces, whichever has the highlighted notes. In this case, it's the one with 2 spaces and the third note. Then this one. As you can see, once you get it, it's really simple. You just fill in the notes. And as you can see here, we have our chord progression ready. All of the notes are on the highlighted grid. We have major and minor chords, depending on which ones were needed in that case. And here's how it sounds. Let's slow it down. Okay, now we have a chord progression that is sort of boring, but it works. You can definitely make a song out of this. Let's make it more spicy, I guess. So the first thing you can do is select all of your bass notes, which are the lowest notes you chose. So hold Control and press mouse and hold Shift if you want to select multiple ones. And then once they are selected, hold Shift and move them 1 octave lower. 1 octave means if you're starting with C5, you want to end up on C4. So hold Shift, move it. So now we have the bass notes 1 octave lower, but we also still have them on the same octave as before. And it sounds like this. And I feel like we can even move them lower. So select them again, hold Control, arrow down, and we have them 2 octaves lower. And now we have a nice chord progression with this deep bass in it. Let's work on it some more. If you want to make these chords more exciting, you can add more highlighted notes. Like all of these will work with the chord. So just trial and error here, but always use the highlighted notes, of course. So now we have sort of a melody going here, and you can also add this repeating note, which just plays through the whole thing like this. We can also do some volume variations here, like so. And maybe some more notes. To make this chord more exciting, of course you can try different ones, but some of them are not as good as the others. So always preview it, and if you like what you hear, keep it there. If you don't, change it. Yeah, this is nice. Okay, I like that. So another thing you can do if you have your chords, you can invert them, which means if some of the chords is like too low or too high, you can take any of these notes you already have placed, like this lower one, and press Control and arrow up to put it octave up. That is an inverted chord. It's still the same chord, but now the notes are in different order. So you can do it with any chord you feel like. Maybe this one is like too high, like the harmonies. So you take the upper note and put it lower. So instead of this, you have this. So it's still the same chord, just different order. So now we have a pretty exciting chord progression here. And it only took us a few minutes to do. So we can do this any number of times, of course. So if I can do it this way, you can do it this way as well. Just follow the rules that I laid out. So let's just end on using this soft piano from Labs, which is really nice. And we can even make a melody to it using the highlighted notes.
All right. This is a quick video that I wanted to share. Just going into the money chord. So you see, like with chord progression, you can also do the money chord with chord progression, right? Because you have to go to the 1, 4, 5, and that's a form of chord progression, right? Those are all tips, really helpful information that you can use to help with your instrumentation, right? 'Cause that's what we're talking about. We're talking about your instrumentation. So when you make your beat, right, once you put your drum pattern down, right, you got your drums down, you got your hi-hats you feel every tune, you got your snares or your claps, or maybe a combination of both on your 3s and your 7s. And then you may have like an 808 or something like that underneath your drums, right, following your drums. Then it will be time to add your instrumentation because, as Metro Boomin said in the video I played a few weeks ago, he said that you start off with your drum patterns first, and then you go on and you add your instrumentation, right? A lot of producers, probably mostly every producer, will mostly it is some instances where you would do the opposite, right? Like if you're working with a sample. I'm sorry, excuse me. Excuse me. Like you're working with a sample, then you would do the opposite. Right? You would go ahead and you would work on your sample, chop your sample, and then go ahead and add your drums and your instrumentation. Or you would do your sample, chop your sample, set it up, probably add your instrumentation, and then add your drums. But one of my beats that I made when I sampled Sailor Moon, I kind of figured out how I wanted it to go. So for me, it was kind of different. I chopped up my sample first, and then I put everything where it needed to go. Then I put the drums, and then I did a lot of post production on that beat. So it's definitely different ways for you to make beats, but mostly when you're just making a beat, you're gonna start off with your drums and then add your instrumentation, right? Like I said, you don't gotta just use a piano, like they did. They used the piano in this instances, and that's fine, right? Because you want to get your feet wet. The piano is familiar to your ears, so you know what sounds good, what don't sound good. You'll just know it, right off the bat, right? Your ear will tell you exactly when something doesn't sound good, when something out of place. So piano was actually the first instrument to use, and then from there you can always swap out and use like a synth or a different pad or even a Rose piano, which is one of my favorites. Some horns, some keyboards. When you use plugins, same thing. You can copy and paste. You can right click on the instrument, hit copy, load up plug in or load up different instrumentation, right click that instrumentation, hit paste, and boom, you have a whole new sound. Now, Elijah, I'm going to play one more video because this is usually the time that I gave you to work on FL Studio, work on your beat and everything. But since you are at home and we're doing an online class, I'm going to play one more video, and then we'll wrap up, all right?
All right.
We're going to play the video, and then we're going to talk about it when I'm done, all right? When the video is done.
Chord progressions that hit 10 different emotions. My goal is to hit every emotion from sad, happy, uplifting, and many, many more. So let's buckle in because I'm going to take you literally through a roller coaster of emotions. Let's make some chords. This first chord progression is uplifting, joyful, and euphoric. We're going to use the D sharp minor scale for this, and it plays the 5, 6, 7, and 1 chord in that scale. Let's add the 5th, and then let's add the 3rd. In their most basic form, they sound like this. Now, to extract all the sweet and joyful emotion out of these chords, I like to add 2 pedal notes, one on the 7th note of the scale, and then one on the 3rd note of the scale. I also like to take the thirds and put them up an octave, and we get this beautiful sound. And then for maximum emotion extraction, add a vocal.
Whatever you did, can you do it some more now? Swear you got me falling for you as a late.
Right in the feels. That hit me right in the feels. This next progression is very deep and serious, and it's actually one of the most common chord progressions in music. This progression uses the B minor scale and uses the 6, 7, and 1 chord, and then it goes back to the 7. In their basic form, they sound like this. When I use these chords, I'm almost always going to put the thirds up an octave. Did you know that if you don't know how to revoice your chords to make them sound better, I added a new course to my EDM bootcamp program below called Music Theory for Producers, and it shows you how to do that. This is a very neutral chord progression. You can make this sound really major or really minor depending on what type of melody you use. So if we write a very simple melody that's rooted in the minor scale, we can make the emotion even more serious and deep. And what's fascinating about this progression is if you took this melody and rooted it in the major scale, the harmony we get is more happy and uplifting. Two completely different moods, same chord progression. This next progression is tense and suspenseful. And here's the crazy thing. It only uses one chord. Yes, you could have a progression that only uses one chord. You can root this chord on any note. I'm going to use G. I'm going to make it really long. I'm going to make a G minor chord. And as always, make sure to pick a sound that matches the mood that you're going for. These type of progressions are so much fun because you could drop a bass down and create maximal emotion with a simple harmony. That is tense! This next progression is great for sad songs. We're going to step into the G minor scale and the 1, 7, 4, and then back up to the 6. In its basic form, they sound like this. But when I make chords, I need maximal extraction of the emotion. So I'm going to take the thirds of each chord and put it up an octave. And then I'm going to add a touch more sadness by adding a pedal tone on the tonic. I think I might start tearing up. This next progression is the perfect feel-good, euphoric progression. If you ever want to make a feel-good track, just use these chords. We're going to step into the B minor scale and use the 6, 3, the 7, and then the 1. In their most basic form, they sound like this. But we need to extract maximal emotion out of these chords. So I'm going to take the third out of each chord and put it up an octave. Next, I'm going to add 2 pedal tones, one on the third, and then the next pedal tone 5 steps above that. And I'm going to add one more note that I know will sound good. These chords are the meaning of life. Real quick, I have to add drums to these. Enhance the chords. We just made these beautiful chords come to life. Here's a similar progression, but more of a touch of sadness and sorrow instead of just being overly joyful. I have a sad synth sound here. We're going to step into the G sharp minor scale, and I'm going to use the 6, 1, 7, and 5. And in their basic form, these chords sound like this. They actually sound pretty good in their basic form. Like, I would use them like that. But the other side of me would totally mess them up, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull these thirds up an octave. I love when the third note of the chord is on top of the chord. I'm also going to add a pedal tone on the third note of the scale. And then another pedal tone 5 steps above that. That is magic. This next progression is one I'd use in a pump-up song. It's got some nice aggression in it with a touch of darker tones. For this one, use a darker sounding synth. We're going to step into the G minor scale and then make the first chord on the 1. You're going to sustain this one for half of the 4-bar loop. Then you're going to go down to the 6 and then put the last chord on the 4. In basic form, they sound like this. Notice how this progression starts with a minor chord and then ends with a minor chord. It's a great way to get a really deep minor sound. As always, I'm going to take these thirds and put them up an octave. But I'm going to go one step farther, and I'm going to take another synth sound and double that third note. Doubling any note of the chords will enhance that note. So if we play it back with some bass and drums, we get this sound. I even added this vocal here because making music is pretty cool.
Is there something I should know? 'Cause I don't know where you go.
I'm sorry, guy. Can't sing. I messed that up. Now for this next progression, we're going to use the same sound, but add a shade of happiness. So we're going to get like a happy, pumped up progression. This progression uses the G minor scale, and we're going to take the 1 chord and stretch it out halfway through the 4-bar loop. But instead of going down like last time, we're going to go up to the 3rd chord of the scale, and then back down to the 6th chord of the scale. And in basic form, we get this sound. But I like to mess things up. These chords were weird. I actually took the 3rd out of these. I took another synth sound and doubled the 5th. Doubled or layered, whatever you want to call it. I added some bass, drums, that same vocal from last time, and then we get this sound.
Is there something I should know? 'Cause I don't know where you go. When you don't pick up the phone, yeah. Is there something I should know?
Wasn't that electric? Like, I wish it was a song that I can play right now and go to the gym and jam to. This next progression is mega relaxed and chill. This one's almost all about the sound we use, because with chill songs, you can virtually use any progression just as long as the sound is super deep and chill. I have this nice soft piano. I'm going to use the C minor scale for this one. We're going to start on the 6, go up to the 1, and then down to the 7 chord. We're going to stretch this 7 chord and back on the 1. In basic form, these chords sound like this. But I'm going to revoice them and make them sound good. But keep in mind, getting that chill, relaxed sound has a lot to do with the atmosphere and the sounds you're using. So I added this mystic drone that's hitting the tonic of the scale. And when it harmonizes with the chord progression, it sounds like this. Isn't that beautiful? I actually took these chords and converted them to a synth to see if I could make that same chill vibe using a synth and a little drum beat. Sounds like this. This final chord progression is my all-time favorite chord progression. The unique part about this progression is that it is only major chords. So there's no minor chords in the whole thing. That means the resulting sound can't get much more cheerful. Here we go. This progression uses the major scale and uses the 4 chord, the 5, and it goes down to the 1. All major chords. So in basic form, it sounds like this. But as always, I love to extract every ounce of happiness out of these chords. And the way I do it with these is with a pedal tone on the tonic. I like to get rid of the 3rd and the 5th. And I'll take the bass notes and put them up an octave. And then I grab this pedal tone, double it, and then we get this sound. But it doesn't stop there. This is one of the prettiest progressions to do weird things with. So I went and added this weird effect called Portal, and I got this sound. I recorded that weird effect, chopped it up, and I did this. I added these mystical vocals. And then I dropped a sick beat and a nice big bass line. It doesn't get better than the 4-5-1 in the major scale. That's a video. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Check out my 6-week music production course below, and I'll see you in the next video.
So last night I was at a symphony event for Spider-Verse, and a young producer approached me. He was like, yo, I don't be knowing, should I start my drums first or the melody first, or what do you do, what should I do? And I basically was like, you know, whatever speaks to you, whatever's inspiring you in that moment the most. Like, if you have a drum beat in your mind, or you might have a melody in your mind first, like, you gotta go to inspiration. But generally, I don't always start one each way. It's just however I'm feeling that day. Like, some days I go in my closet, I get dressed. I might build my outfit off my pants first. Sometimes I might have a shirt and just build around that, or a jacket. Just depends. So I said all that to say, I do also feel like today is often slept on by the younger generation, the power of starting with your drums first and securing a for sure bounce that's gonna work, a bounce that's gonna, a bounce in a rhythm that's gonna captivate people and just keep.
All right, sorry about that, Elijah. Wasn't trying to play that video, but those 2 videos that I played though was pretty much talking about chord progression and just the money chords and just how do you start off your instrumentation. So what did we learn today, right? We learned about the money chords or the 1-4-5 chords and how they're instrumental in music theory and how you can use these things in the, use these chords in the instrumentation of making your beat, right? So, Elijah, all I want you to do over the week, next week, until next Tuesday, pretty much just read up on the money chords, and we're going to talk about that next week when we come back. Great.
All right.
All right, now next week we're going to talk about sampling. So the next lecture of next week will be about sampling, using edits, and how you can use that within your beat. What's the best way to sample, what you can do with Edison, and how useful it is, not just for sampling, but even just with the stock sounds and how you can change them around. So that'll be next week, but it is about that time, Elijah. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach me at Aramis.singleton.clickservices.nfp.org, or if you see before and after class, you can pull me to the side and ask the questions, and I will answer and help you out the best that I can. But until then, Elijah, you have a great and safe night, and I will see you all Friday for the streaming class.
Talk to you.
Elijah, thanks.